There is a quiet depth to being sensitive, a way of feeling the world that is both a blessing and a burden. Those who move through life carrying the weight of others' emotions, who feel more than seems reasonable, who sense the unspoken currents of human energy, these are the empaths. And Carl Jung, one of the most profound thinkers of the human mind, left us a warning for those who carry such hearts. It is not a warning born of fear, but of care, a gentle, unyielding reminder that the inner life must not be sacrificed to the outer world. Jung understood that empaths are not weak. Far from it, they are the ones most attuned to the subtle threads that connect all living beings. They notice the tremor of sadness in a stranger's voice, the invisible tension behind a friend's smile, the silent despair hidden beneath the bravado of the confident. And because they feel these things so deeply, empaths are often drawn into the pain of the world, sometimes carrying it as if it were their own. This is where Jung's warning begins, the caution against losing oneself in the ocean of other people's emotions. He believed that the human psyche is a delicate ecosystem, that every person must navigate their own shadow, the parts of themselves that are unacknowledged, suppressed, or rejected. For empaths, the danger lies in neglecting this inner work. When the boundaries between self and other dissolve, when every external sorrow is internalized, the empath can become overwhelmed, exhausted, and even ill, as though the weight of every grief in the world has settled upon their shoulders. Jung's message is not to retreat from empathy, but to learn the art of containment, the quiet discipline of feeling deeply while remaining whole. Being an empath in the modern world is like walking through a forest at night, the senses heightened, every whisper of the wind amplified, every shadow a story. Jung recognized that without guidance, empaths could wander endlessly, mistaking other people's emotions for their own, mistaking external chaos for inner truth. He observed that empaths are often compelled to fix, to heal, to intervene, even when it is not their responsibility. This compulsion, though noble in intention, carries a silent danger, the erosion of self. And Jung's warning is a reminder to stand firm within one's own psyche, to cultivate a sanctuary within the mind and heart that is inviolable. He spoke often of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming oneself, of untangling the threads of the personal and the collective, of recognizing what is truly yours and what belongs to the world around you. For empaths, individuation is not optional. It is a lifeline. Without it, every encounter becomes a potential drain, every emotion a storm, and the empath risks losing the very essence of who they are. Jung's insight was that sensitivity is a gift, but only when paired with discernment. To feel without discernment is to wander blind in a river that has no shore, to be carried away by currents that were never meant to be yours. And yet, there is a beauty in this challenge. Jung did not warn empaths to close themselves off, but to awaken to their own inner world with reverence and care, to observe their feelings as a scientist might observe a delicate experiment, with both curiosity and caution. There is a certain courage in holding your own heart while standing amidst the pain of others, a courage that is quiet, unassuming, yet profoundly powerful. Jung believed that empaths could transform this sensitivity into a wellspring of wisdom, insight, and compassion, but only if they learn the discipline of boundaries, the gentle art of self-possession, and the courage to confront their own shadows. To be an empath, according to Jung, is to live in duality, to feel deeply the world and simultaneously cultivate a resilient inner life. It is a balancing act, delicate and exacting, but not impossible. The warning is not that the world is cruel, or that sensitivity is a flaw. The warning is that without awareness, without intentional care, an empath can become a ghost of themselves, endlessly giving, endlessly absorbing, and yet quietly vanishing beneath the weight of what they feel. And this is why Jung's voice continues to whisper across the decades, to those who carry the world in their hearts, reminding them that self-preservation is not selfishness, and that the truest compassion begins within. Even now, as we navigate a world that moves faster than ever, filled with unseen sorrows and subtle tensions, Jung's warning resonates. It is a reminder that the empath's journey is not just outward, into the lives and hearts of others, but inward, a journey of reflection, recognition, and ultimately, reclamation. To honor the gift of sensitivity is to honor oneself, to walk the line between giving and protecting, between feeling and knowing, between connection and integrity. And in this balance, empaths can find not just survival, but a profound, luminous strength that transforms the weight of the world into clarity, insight, and even joy. Jung's caution for empaths is not theoretical, it is lived, observed, and real. The empath's life is often punctuated by a sense of being too much and never enough, of giving endlessly and still feeling empty. It is as if their very nervous system has been tuned to the frequencies of the world, to every tremor of joy and every pulse of pain around them. And yet Jung reminds us that the first responsibility of an empath is not to absorb, but to observe. To witness without being consumed, to care without losing oneself, this is the subtle, sacred art that defines the life of a true empath. Many empaths wander through existence believing that their value lies solely in their capacity to give, to soothe, to heal, to comfort. And while these gifts are real, Jung saw the peril in mistaking them for identity. There is a danger in thinking that sensitivity alone is enough, that feeling the suffering of others validates the self. For empaths, he warned, this can lead to a slow erosion of the soul, a quiet fatigue that creeps in unnoticed, leaving one depleted, anxious, and disconnected from their own essence. He urged empaths to remember that the heart must be replenished, that the inner sanctuary must be maintained with the same care given to others. It is here, in the tension between outward compassion and inward preservation, that Jung's wisdom shines. He believed that the empath's journey is inseparable from self-knowledge, the willingness to explore one's own psyche, to confront hidden fears, unprocessed grief, and the subtle ways in which one's own needs have been ignored. The empath cannot merely navigate the external currents of human emotion, they must dive into the still waters of their own inner life, and emerge with clarity, strength, and a conscious sense of boundary. Empaths often struggle with saying no, with stepping back from relationships or environments that drain them. Jung would say that this hesitation is not weakness, it is a test of discernment. The world is filled with voices, emotions, and pressures that will seek to draw the empath outward endlessly. To remain tethered to oneself, to protect the sacred space within, is not selfishness, it is a vital act of survival and integrity. Jung's warning is a reminder that giving endlessly without replenishment leads not to heroism, but to dissolution, a gradual vanishing of the self into the collective, until the empath is no longer distinguishable from the suffering they carry. There is a beauty in the struggle he describes, for it is through this discipline, through the conscious cultivation of boundaries and self-awareness, that the empath discovers the full depth of their strength. Jung saw empaths as potential sages of the modern world, as those uniquely positioned to bridge the inner and outer, the seen and unseen. Yet this potential can only flourish when the empath learns to step back, to observe the flow of energy around them without being swept away, and to honor the rhythms of their own heart as faithfully as they honor the lives of others. Consider the empath who moves through a crowded city street and feels the anxiety, anger, and loneliness radiating from strangers, who comes home exhausted by invisible burdens, yet unsure why the world weighs so heavily upon them. Jung would say that this empath must pause, must turn inward, must allow themselves to feel their own breath and their own quiet center before attempting to carry the world's weight further. In this pause lies power, a power not of domination or control, but of conscious presence, of emotional sovereignty. It is here that the empath transforms from a passive absorber of the world into a mindful navigator of its currents. Jung's philosophy of the psyche offers a roadmap for this journey. He teaches that the unconscious is not something to fear, but a mirror, a reflection of what is hidden, repressed, or unacknowledged. For empaths, the unconscious can be overwhelming, a repository of not only personal shadows but also the shadows of those they feel around them. The final warning is to approach this inner landscape with respect and caution, to recognize that while empathy connects us to the human collective, it also demands rigorous self-care, introspection, and conscious discernment. Without it, sensitivity becomes vulnerability, and compassion becomes self-erasure. And yet, the empath's path is not one of isolation. Jung's guidance is not to shut out the world, but to engage with it from a place of integrity and self-possession, to allow the gift of empathy to enrich life rather than diminish it. It is a paradox. The deeper one protects the inner life, the more one can truly give. The more one stands firmly within their own boundaries, the more fully one can embrace the needs, the struggles, and the joys of others. This is the essence of Jung's warning, that sensitivity without self-awareness leads to collapse, while sensitivity with self-awareness leads to wisdom, resilience, and profound impact. As we move deeper into Jung's insight, it becomes clear that the life of an empath is not merely about enduring emotions, it is about transforming them. Jung believed that every feeling carries a message, not just from the outside world, but from the self itself. For the empath, the task is to distinguish between what belongs to them and what belongs to others, a task that requires patience, honesty, and quiet courage. There is no shame in stepping back, no weakness in saying enough, for the empath who respects their own limits gains clarity, and in that clarity, the capacity to love and understand is magnified. Empaths often face a subtle tension between wanting to help and needing to heal themselves. Jung observed that unresolved inner conflicts leave the empath vulnerable, like a vessel with invisible cracks, ready to spill over with even the smallest external pressure. And yet, when empaths face their own shadows, when they confront the parts of themselves they have ignored or rejected, they build resilience. They learn to inhabit their own emotional space fully, so that they can engage with the world without being consumed by it. The final warning is not to avoid the suffering of others, but to avoid losing oneself in the midst of it, a warning whispered in the language of depth psychology, but felt in the very bones of the sensitive soul. There is a rhythm to this practice, a gentle back and forth between engagement and retreat, between listening to the world and listening to oneself. Jung would say that this rhythm is essential for the empath's growth. Without it, the constant absorption of external energy becomes a slow erosion, a quiet theft of vitality that often goes unnoticed until exhaustion, anxiety, or despair makes itself known. And yet, when this rhythm is respected, the empath becomes a conduit, a channel of insight, wisdom, and compassion, not in a way that drains, but in a way that flows, renewing both self and others. Jung also emphasized the role of reflection and conscious observation. He believed that empaths must not only feel, but think, must not only absorb, but discern. Each emotion sensed from the world must be weighed, understood, and placed in its proper context. Without this inner work, the empath's sensitivity can become distorted, creating confusion, anxiety, and even a distorted sense of responsibility for the pain around them. Jung's warning is a call to cultivate mindfulness, to observe the world without being entirely shaped by it, to honor the feelings of others while honoring one's own soul as sacred territory. The empath's journey is also one of courage. It takes courage to admit that some burdens are not yours to carry, to recognize that saying no is not betrayal, and that self-preservation is a moral imperative. Jung understood that empaths are often driven by an almost instinctual desire to help, to heal, to rescue, and that without conscious boundaries, this instinct can become self-destructive. The warning is subtle, yet powerful, that the very gift which connects the empath to the human collective can, if left unchecked, dissolve their sense of self. And in that dissolution, neither the empath nor those they wish to serve can truly flourish. In practical terms, Jung's philosophy encourages empaths to develop rituals of restoration, ways of grounding themselves that reinforce their inner boundaries. Whether it is through solitude, reflection, meditation, or immersion in creative or natural pursuits, these practices act as a lifeline, a way to return to oneself after being swept into the currents of the world. Jung believed that such practices are not indulgent, they are essential. Without them, sensitivity becomes vulnerability. With them, sensitivity becomes power, a quiet, unwavering power that is both stabilizing and transformative. And so, Jung's warning unfolds not as a restriction, but as an invitation to embrace one's sensitivity with wisdom, to feel with discernment, to give without losing oneself. For the empath, the path is one of dual mastery, of understanding the external world without being swallowed by it, and of cultivating an internal world that is rich, secure, and sovereign. This balance is delicate, yes, and it requires constant attention, courage, and compassion for oneself. But it is also where the empath discovers the fullness of their potential, the luminous strength that arises when sensitivity meets self-awareness. Jung's insight assures us that empaths are not fragile, not weak, and not doomed to suffer endlessly. They are powerful beyond measure, capable of profound understanding and connection. Yet this power comes with responsibility, a responsibility not to the world, but to oneself first. And in honoring that responsibility, in listening to the quiet warning of the mind and heart, the empath transforms not only their own life, but the lives of those around them, quietly, profoundly, irrevocably. Jung's warning to empaths extends beyond psychology into the very essence of existence, into the way we navigate life, relationships, and the human heart. He understood that empaths are not merely observers of emotion, but participants in a vast, interconnected web of feeling. Every act of kindness, every burst of anger, every subtle shift in energy is registered deeply within them, and this awareness carries both a gift and a challenge. To live fully as an empath is to accept the beauty of connection alongside the necessity of boundaries, to honor the world while honoring oneself. Consider the empath who finds themselves drawn to those in pain, who absorbs the grief of friends, strangers, and even the world at large. Jung would say that such a person must cultivate an inner compass, a quiet, unwavering sense of what belongs to them, and what belongs elsewhere. Without this compass, the empath drifts, pulled in all directions, consumed by currents they cannot control. And yet, with it, they navigate life with clarity, able to engage fully without surrendering their identity, able to love deeply without losing their center. The final warning is clear: sensitivity is a gift only when paired with self-possession. Jung also recognized that empaths often carry a sense of moral responsibility for the suffering they perceive, a compulsion to fix, to heal, to intervene. While noble in intent, this compulsion can lead to self-neglect, burnout, and even despair. Jung's guidance is to distinguish between compassion and obligation, between feeling for someone and feeling responsible for them. This distinction is subtle, yet it is the cornerstone of an empath's survival and growth. To overstep this boundary is to invite overwhelm. To honor it is to transform sensitivity into wisdom. Life as an empath, according to Jung, is a practice in discernment. It is a continuous negotiation between connection and separation, a balancing of empathy and self-preservation. And this practice is not static. It requires constant awareness, reflection, and courage. Each day presents new challenges, new energies to navigate, and new opportunities to exercise the art of boundary and care. The empath who honors this practice discovers a profound serenity, a deep reservoir of inner strength that allows them to move through the world without being consumed by it. Jung also saw the spiritual dimension of empathy, that sensitivity is not just a psychological trait, but a doorway to understanding the human condition. For the empath who cultivates awareness, the emotions they feel are not burdens, but teachers. Grief teaches patience. Anger teaches clarity. Joy teaches gratitude. Each feeling, when observed consciously, becomes a guide, a map of the self, and a reflection of the collective. Jung's warning, then, is not a limitation but an invitation to enter this deeper dialogue with life, to approach each emotion with reverence, and to recognize that the empath's gift is sacred and transformative when wielded wisely. In practical terms, Jung would advise empaths to develop rituals of retreat and renewal, moments of solitude in nature, periods of reflection in quiet spaces, and intentional practices that replenish energy rather than drain it. He understood that empaths must nourish the inner life as fiercely as they engage with the outer world. These practices are not indulgent or escapist, they are essential lifelines. They create the conditions for empathy to flourish without collapse, for sensitivity to become strength rather than a source of suffering. And so, Jung's final warning is both cautionary and empowering. It acknowledges the vulnerability of empaths, the ease with which they can be overwhelmed, and the subtle dangers of absorbing too much of the world's pain. Yet it also illuminates a path of profound possibility, a life in which empaths move with clarity, compassion, and conscious power. The empath who heeds this warning does not retreat from the world, they enter it fully, equipped with awareness, fortified with boundaries, and guided by the luminous strength of a self that has been carefully tended and deeply understood. To live as an empath, in Jung's vision, is to embody both sensitivity and sovereignty, to be attuned to the suffering and joy around us while remaining rooted in our own essence. It is a path of courage, reflection, and careful balance. And in this delicate equilibrium, empaths find not only survival, but meaning, purpose, and a luminous capacity to impact the world profoundly without losing themselves to it. And now we arrive at the final reflection, the culmination of Jung's warning, and the quiet wisdom it offers to those who carry the world within their hearts. Jung understood that the empath's path is not linear. It is a winding journey through joy and sorrow, connection and solitude, giving and receiving. To ignore his warning is to risk exhaustion, confusion, and the gradual erosion of the self. Yet to heed it is to step into a life of clarity, strength, and profound insight, a life in which sensitivity is not a burden, but a luminous guide. Empaths who disregard the boundaries Jung emphasizes often find themselves adrift, their emotions entangled with others, their inner compass blurred, their energies slowly siphoned by every unmet need and unprocessed feeling around them. Relationships that should uplift become draining. Work and daily life feel heavier than they need to be. Even moments of joy can feel fleeting, overshadowed by the invisible weight of the world. Jung's warning is a quiet plea to pause, to turn inward, to honor the sacred space of one's own psyche before attempting to carry the weight of others. And yet, for those who listen, the rewards are profound. Jung teaches that the empath who cultivates awareness and practices discernment transforms not only their own life, but the lives of everyone they touch. By learning to say no without guilt, to step back without fear, and to replenish the inner self with intention, empaths become pillars of calm, clarity, and compassionate presence. They no longer absorb the chaos around them, they perceive it, understand it, and respond with wisdom rather than overwhelm. Their sensitivity becomes a channel of insight and healing, rather than a source of exhaustion. Jung's philosophy reminds us that self-preservation is not selfishness. It is an act of courage, an assertion of one's own worth, and a prerequisite for authentic connection. To honor one's own emotions, to set boundaries, and to cultivate inner strength is to create the conditions for empathy to flourish. The empath who practices this lives fully, aware of the world's pain, attuned to its beauty, yet rooted in the stability of a self that is consciously nurtured and fiercely protected. This is the balance Jung envisioned, the delicate equilibrium in which sensitivity and sovereignty coexist, and in which life's challenges are met with grace rather than collapse. Perhaps the most profound lesson of Jung's warning is that empathy, when practiced with awareness, is not merely a trait. It is a form of wisdom, a way of seeing, a conscious engagement with the human condition. Empaths who honor their inner life become bridges between hearts, capable of sensing the unspoken, responding with care, and illuminating the hidden currents of emotion that shape the world. They learn to move through life not as vessels emptied by the suffering of others, but as luminous beings who carry understanding, compassion, and clarity wherever they go. And so, Jung's final words to empaths resonate across time, a gentle, unyielding reminder that the heart must be tended with the same care with which it tends to others. Sensitivity is a gift, yes, but it is a gift that demands respect, boundaries, and conscious cultivation. To ignore this is to risk being swept away, to give endlessly without replenishment, and to lose the self in the very act of feeling. To embrace it, however, is to discover a strength that is quiet, enduring, and transformative, a power rooted in awareness, compassion, and the courageous act of preserving one's own soul while moving through the lives of others. The empath who heeds Jung's warning does not simply survive, they thrive. They navigate the tides of life with clarity, offer their presence without losing themselves, and transform the very act of feeling into a source of light, wisdom, and deep human connection. And in this way, the world is not only witnessed by their sensitivity, it is elevated, enriched, and quietly transformed by the depth of their conscious heart.